So 10 were healed, but only one of them thought of something. That one thought, where did this come from? This had to come from somewhere. They all, after being healed, ran off. I can imagine they were leaping and laughing and dancing. But one of them said, wait a second. This came from someone. And so he returned to finish what had been started, to say thank you. And that's what we're here to do tonight, to say thank you to God. We look at the blessings of our lives. We think of the people who are going to be gathered around the table wherever it is that we will be feasting tomorrow. We look at the faces over here on the altar of remembrance, and we say, this all came from someone. Many of you know the name Alex Haley, one of the most famous movie producers ever. I am told that in his office, he always kept a picture of a turtle sitting on a fence post. And someone once asked him, why do you have that in your office? It's so strange. And he said, it's a good reminder. He said, whenever you see a turtle sitting on a fence post, you know that little guy had some help. And he said, that's who I am. And I need that reminder. Sometimes I start thinking, look at all that I've done, and wow, my name is so known, and isn't this great? And then he remembers that, no, I'm a turtle sitting on a fence post. I had so much help to get to where I am. One of the things that we believe in our culture that's not true at all is that you can be a self-made person. Have you ever heard anyone describe someone else that way, or sometimes even describe themselves that way? Hey, I did this all myself. I'm a self-made man. She's a self-made woman. I mean, that's the biggest lie there ever was, isn't it? That doesn't exist. Self-made? To think that, you'd have to ignore so many other things. If I were to say I'm self-made, I'd have to ignore all that I learned from my parents. I'd have to imagine that I was the one who taught myself, not give my teachers any credit. What about the friends who've supported me along the way? What about the times I was sick and I had to go to a doctor, or beyond the family doctor and had to go to a specialist to get it dealt with? How many times have I gone to a library that was filled with books written by experts on subjects I know nothing about? I think about earlier times in my life where things could have gone so wrong. When I started losing my hearing in first grade, but my parents took me to a doctor who put tubes in my ears, and so now I can hear. The night that our garage caught on fire when I was in high school, and it was volunteer firefighters that came out late at night to save our house. And something really moving that is an experience I have from time to time? Sometimes I'll meet someone, maybe for the first time, and they'll say, oh my goodness, years ago when you were a seminarian, I prayed for you. I saw your name on a prayer card, and I prayed for you. Out of curiosity, does anybody here have that experience with me? Did anybody ever pray for me or for seminarians before I came here? Raise your hand if I had prayers from you. Dan McHale is here. How many of you have ever prayed for Dan McHale? Or for Matt Houle? Or for Matt Duclos? Do you see? We don't do this on our own. No one does it on their own. Paul, who's just back from Iraq, thank goodness people were praying for him while he was in danger. If you think about it, this includes absolutely everything in life. And that meal that you're going to have tomorrow, it's going to be included there too. Because someone once pointed out to me, it's impossible to make food from scratch. You know how people say that? Oh, that's from scratch. Actually, that's impossible. Do you know what Carl Sagan once said? If you ever wanted to make an apple pie from scratch, the first step would be to invent the universe. Where do apples come from? Where does grain come from? That's what we're here for tonight, is to just recognize, to take a breath and say, there is not one thing that did not come from our Maker. There is nothing that hasn't come from God. So we have to acknowledge that and be grateful for it. That is the holy work of Thanksgiving, and why I think it's one of the very best holidays that there is. We have to figure out, although we can accept that there are talents that God gave us that are uniquely ours, from God's hand, but are ours, that they cooperate with everyone else's. And so together, we make this great mix of life on earth. We are instruments in a great symphony that God has composed and is conducting. And I think a holy thing for us to do is to go over to that altar of remembrance and to look into the faces of our loved one, especially those who lived long ago and died long ago, to look into the faces of those ancestors and to say quietly to them, you did so much for me. You made so many sacrifices for me. Maybe you immigrated here from a faraway place and put yourself at total risk. You didn't speak the language. You didn't have any contacts. You went from being a professional to a laborer because you had to start from scratch, and you did it for me because you knew that someday I would be born here and you wanted me to have this life. We recognize the sacrifices that were made for us. And if we feel brave, we could do this too. We could go the next step and say, tell me, does my life please you? Are you proud of the way I'm living my life? Am I doing the kind of job you'd like me to do after all of those sacrifices you made for me? Honestly, some of our ancestors came in the hulls of slave ships and were sleeping spoon style so that they could survive and have descendants that could one day be blessed the way we are. Do our lives show that, reflect that great dignity, that incredible gift of love and sacrifice that was made for us? Maybe we could say to those ancestors, help me to see a shift I could make between now and next Thanksgiving so that when I ask you this question next Thanksgiving, I feel even better about your response. So here we are tonight, friends, sitting up here on our fence post, enjoying this view. What a great time for us to say, this all came from someone.